So we talked a little bit earlier about one group of people with unmet needs are teenagers who are struggling as opposed to those who are doing well. What have you found out about both in that specific area and then in with other groups as well? What innovative approaches seem to make a difference? And is there any part of society that is best placed to help? Is it, does it tend? Is this something government is well placed to do, or is it kind of better off in non-governmental organisations?
The other starting point for this project was in fact a group of foundations. Indeed, we kicked the project off at the annual gathering of foundations. In Britain there are 8,000 of them. And we said to them, you spend about £3.5 billion a year. You're meant to be philanthropy, which means meeting needs. How do you know where to spend your money? And wouldn't it be a good idea if some of you actually pooled together to find out where you could achieve the most impact with your billions? We didn't get 8,000 signed up, but a dozen of the quite big ones did join together to fund this project and to actually really get involved in the project as it went along. Partly on the assumption that as we discovered sort of emerging needs, there would probably be a need to fund innovation, more experimental approaches, which naturally government wouldn't be so good at doing, and partly a knowledge that we were about to hit an era of public spending squeeze when there would just be more pressure on the community philanthropy as government basically retrenched, and that is indeed beginning in the UK, and I'm glad to say not really here. And so there's, as a result, a lot of what's come out of this is a focus on what are the projects and styles of approach which may be most effective at dealing with these needs. And I need to be careful not to sort of rabbit on for hours, but just to summarise two sets of streams which have come out of this. The first is for the biggest funder of all, which is the lottery fund, which is spends about 600 million a year and is much the biggest funder. Out of our work with them, they've developed a series of funding streams around teenage life and resilience. And some of these are really about ensuring clearer pathways, routes to the future from sort of 13 into the workforce. Some of them are about fairly traditional things, how to design new kinds of apprenticeship, new kinds of out-of-school activity, new kinds of school which fit the work of the lives of disaffected teenagers. Some of them are about how do you tie in the support of other kinds of adults as coaches and mentors and so on. And some of them are about how do you build psychological strength, resilience, so that if you are in a chaotic family or household or community, you're more likely to get through reasonably intact. We're also trialling this year quite radical ideas on finance, social impact bonds, where we actually raise money from commercial markets and foundations to invest in really the life chance of a group of young people, and government pays back according to how successful we are in hitting milestones, keeping them out of prison or getting them jobs and so on. And rather luckily, both the government and the opposition have become very strongly committed to at least testing out this idea. And it's a way of philanthropy getting much more involved in real impact on outcomes than anything in the past. And at the other end of the age spectrum, the other thing this big lottery fund has done is open up a series of programs focused on isolation of older people. I mean, this clearly is the sort of epidemic problem of aging urbanized societies, that many people will live into old age with their spouses having died, their friends having gone away. And what can we do, not just in terms of traditional befriending and visiting services, but also more imaginative ways of linking together, informal supports and visits, help with meals and shopping and gardening, with the support provided by statutory professional services. How do we get the young elderly supporting the older elderly, drawing on some Japanese time bank kind of models and using social networks and so on. And there's lots of very exciting things happening in that space, pretty low cost, but it seems quite high impact in terms of changing the sort of daily life of this very large number of people who are vulnerable, elderly and often alone.
Thanks. So we're going to open it up to the audience for questions in a second, but just before we do that, I wanted to ask you about a specific case study that you did as part of the report on meeting needs in cities at night. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this was a sort of really just an enthusiasm of one of my colleagues who decided he wanted to stay up every night. And so he thought it'd be interesting to, we wanted to take different slices of looking at need. So one slice is to look at a place, another slice was to look at a group like, say, teenage parents or older people, and then the other slice was to look at time. And our premise there was that the night is when all sorts of other needs come into visibility. They're partly the needs of night workers. 24-hour cities have many more people in retail or the police or the ambulances having to work at night, and lots of evidence on the damage that does to their physical health, to their social relationships and so on. But also the emergency services are seeing the people who literally come onto the streets when everyone else is asleep in bed, who often are the ones with the most severe problems of drugs and alcohol and mental health. And every city is another world at night than in the day, and not just, you know, the drunken teenagers in Melbourne streets on a Friday night. I'm talking about actually the sort of another series of things. So what Will, my colleague, did was essentially spending quite a lot of nights out in an ethnographic style, charting what was happening, what the needs were. And it's quite a small case study. In fact, we're doing a much bigger project on nights and needs throughout this year, which will result in a book, photographic exhibition, film, and so on. Because it is literally, this is the invisible underbelly of every city like this. And I would urge any of you, if there's a way you can, literally spend the night out in the city streets with an ambulance crew, a police force, a homeless shelter, you see your own place in a completely different way.